At the edge of a new nuclear arms race. The US's moves to resume nuclear testing, also signaling the demise of the ill-fated CTBT, could be the first signs. In mid-April, a report issued by the United States State Department on adherence to and compliance with arms control, non-proliferation, and disarmament agreements and commitments compliance report raised concerns that China might be conducting nuclear tests with low yields at its Lok Nor test site, in violation of its Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, CTBT, undertakings. The US report also claims that Russia has conducted nuclear weapons experiments that produced a nuclear yield and were inconsistent with zero yield understanding underlying the CTBT, though it was uncertain about how many such experiments had been conducted. Russia and China have rejected the US's claims, but with growing rivalry among major powers, the report is a likely harbinger of a new nuclear arms race, which would also mark the demise of the CTBT that came into being in 1996 but has failed to enter into force even after a quarter century. What does CTBT ban mean? For decades, a ban on nuclear testing was seen as the necessary first step towards curbing the nuclear arms race, but Cold War politics made it impossible. A partial test ban treaty was concluded in 1963 banning underwater and atmospheric tests, but this only drove testing underground. By the time the CTBT negotiations began in Geneva in 1994, global politics had changed. The Cold War had ended and the nuclear arms race was over. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or the USSR, had broken up and its principal testing site, Semipalatinsk, was in Kazakhstan. Russia still had access to Novaya Zemlya near the Arctic Circle. In 1991, Russia declared a unilateral moratorium on testing, followed by the US in 1992. By this time, the US had conducted 1,054 tests and Russia, 715. Negotiations were often contentious. France and China continued testing, claiming that they had conducted far fewer tests and needed to validate new designs since the CTBT did not imply an end to nuclear deterrence. France and the US even toyed with the idea of a CTBT that would permit testing at a low threshold, below 500 tons of TNT equivalent. This was 1/30th of the little boy, the bomb the US dropped on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. Its explosive yield was estimated to be the equivalent of 15,000 tons of TNT. Civil society and the non-nuclear weapon states reacted negatively to such an idea and it was dropped. Some countries proposed that the best way to verify a comprehensive test ban would be to permanently shut down all test sites, an idea that was unwelcome to the nuclear weapon states. Eventually, the US came up with the idea of defining the comprehensive test ban as a zero-yield test ban that would prohibit supercritical hydronuclear tests but not subcritical hydrodynamic nuclear tests. Once the United Kingdom and France came on board, the US was able to prevail upon Russia and China to accept this understanding. After all, this was the moment of the US's unipolar supremacy. At home, the Clinton administration in the US satisfied the hawks by announcing a science-based nuclear stockpile stewardship and management program, a generously funded project to keep the nuclear laboratories in business and the Pentagon happy. Accordingly, the CTBT prohibits all parties from carrying out any nuclear weapon test explosion or any other nuclear explosion. These terms are neither defined nor elaborated. Why it lacks authority. Another controversy arose regarding the entry into force provisions, Article 14 of the treaty. After India's proposals for anchoring the CTBT in a disarmament framework did not find acceptance, in June 1996, India announced its decision to withdraw from the negotiations. Unhappy at this turn, the UK, China and Pakistan took the lead in revising the entry into force provisions. The new provisions listed 44 countries by name whose ratification was necessary for the treaty to enter into force and included India. India protested that this attempt at arm twisting violated a country's sovereign right to decide if it wanted to join a treaty but was ignored. The CTBT was adopted by a majority vote and open for signature. Of the 44 listed countries, to date only 36 have ratified the treaty. China, Egypt, Iran, Israel and the US have signed but not ratified. China maintains that it will only ratify it after the US does so, but the Republican-dominated Senate had rejected it in 1999. In addition, North Korea, India and Pakistan are the three who have not signed. All three have also undertaken tests after 1996, India and Pakistan in May 1998 and North Korea 6 times between 2006 and 2017. The CTBT has therefore not entered into force and lacks legal authority. Nevertheless, an international organization to verify the CTBT was established in Vienna with a staff of about 230 persons and an annual budget of $130 million. Ironically, the US is the largest contributor with a share of $17 million. The Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization, CTBTO, runs an elaborate verification system built around a network of over 325 seismic, radionuclide, infrasound and hydroacoustic underwater monitoring stations. The CTBTO has refrained from backing the US's allegations. Competition is back. The key change from the 1990s is that the US's unipolar moment is over and strategic competition among major powers is back. The US now identifies Russia and China as rivals. Its nuclear posture review asserts that the US faces new nuclear threats because both Russia and China are increasing their reliance on nuclear weapons. The US, therefore, has to expand the role of its nuclear weapons and have a more usable and diversified nuclear arsenal. The Trump administration has embarked on a 30-year modernization plan with a price tag of $1.2 trillion, which could go up over the years. Readiness levels at the Nevada test site that has been silent since 1992 are being enhanced to permit resumption of testing at 6 months' notice. Russia and China have been concerned about the US's growing technological lead, particularly in missile defense and conventional global precision strike capabilities. Russia has responded by exploring hypersonic delivery systems and theater systems, while China has embarked on a modernization program to enhance the survivability of its arsenal, which is considerably smaller. In addition, both countries are also investing heavily in offensive cyber capabilities. The new US report stops short of accusing China for a violation but refers to a high level of activity at the Lok Noa test site throughout 2019, and concludes that together with its lack of transparency, China provokes concerns about its intent to observe the zero-yield moratorium on testing. The US claims that Russian experiments have generated nuclear yield but is unable to indicate how many such experiments were conducted in 2019. It suggests that Russia could be testing in a manner that releases nuclear energy from an explosive canister, generating suspicions about its compliance. The new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, New START, limits US and Russian arsenals but will expire in 2021, and US President Donald Trump has already indicated that he does not plan to extend it. Instead, the Trump administration would like to bring China into some kind of nuclear arms control talks, something China has avoided by pointing to the fact that the US and Russia still account for over 90% of global nuclear arsenals. Current context. Both China and Russia have dismissed the US's allegations, pointing to the Trump administration's backtracking from other negotiated agreements such as the Iran nuclear deal or the US-Russia Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces (INF) treaty. Tensions with China are already high, with trade and technology disputes, militarization in the South China Sea, and most recently, with the novel coronavirus pandemic. The US could also be preparing the ground for resuming testing at Nevada. The Cold War rivalry was already visible when the nuclear arms race began in the 1950s. New rivalries have already emerged. Resumption of nuclear testing may signal the demise of the ill-fated CTBT, marking the beginnings of a new